This holiday season, step into the world of Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, the award-winning audio drama podcast from Hope Media Group and Compassion International. Returning for its 2024 season, this classic tale of redemption and forgiveness is brought to life like never before. Whether you're gathered with family or listening solo, Scrooge is the perfect way to embrace the true meaning of Christmas. Feel the power of the season's spirit with a story of transformation and hope. Catch Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, wherever you listen to podcasts or tune in on ScroogePodcast.com. This year, let the story move you and remind you of the joy of forgiveness and the magic of Christmas.
This Thanksgiving, as we gather with loved ones and reflect on what we're grateful for, let's not forget to take care of ourselves. If you've been feeling low on energy, especially with the shorter days and holiday stress, it might be time to nourish your body in a healthier way. That's where Organifi comes in. Organifi offers organic superfood blends packed with plant-based nutrition to help you move from feeling depleted to fully nourished. I personally love their Harmony blend, a rich, chocolatey cacao drink that gives me the cozy afternoon comfort I crave without the sugar. It's made with 12 superfood ingredients to help balance hormones and keep me feeling my best. And this holiday season, Organifi makes a great gift to share with a loved one. This next week, Organifi is offering some amazing holiday deals. Black Friday, get 30% off site-wide, free shipping plus a free steel water bottle for the first 1,000 orders. And Cyber Monday, get 40% off site-wide, free shipping, and free magnesium for the first 1,000 orders. To take advantage of these amazing offers and more, visit www.organifi.com/bestofyou and use code bestofyou. That's ORGANIFI.com/bestofyou. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Allison, and I'm so glad you're here to discover what brings out the best of you. This podcast is all about breaking free from painful patterns, mending the past, and discovering our true selves in God. I can't wait to get started as we learn together how to become the best version of who we are with God's help. Hey everyone, and welcome to this very special Thanksgiving episode of the Best of You podcast. I am so thrilled to be with you on this special day and the days that follow Thanksgiving for this well-timed episode. I recorded this conversation a while back and realized it was the perfect episode to share with you today. This is a day when we often feel like we should feel all the things like gratitude, like joy, like peace and serenity. But the truth is, other emotions often show up on the holidays. It's so normal to feel a variety of different emotions on a day like Thanksgiving or the day after Thanksgiving or days when your kids are not at school or days when you're spending lots of time with family members that you love, but also bring up complicated feelings inside of you. And so in honor of all the emotions you might be feeling this Thanksgiving, I am thrilled to invite you into this conversation I had with Anjuli Paschall. She's a spiritual director, and she's written a beautiful book called Feel, a collection of liturgies offering hope for every complicated emotion. And what I love about this resource is she goes through 75 different emotions, offering a way to name them and also a way to bring those different emotions into your conversation with God. And so if you've read my book, I Shouldn't Feel This Way, I talk about the importance of naming tools. We need ways to name the different things that we feel. Sometimes it's so elusive. We don't even really recognize that uncomfortable feeling or sensation that's tugging at the corner of our soul, right? We don't even realize we're feeling it until after we've had a meltdown or after we've lashed out at someone or after the day is over and we realize, oh my gosh, I was just agitated all day long. And so in this book, she's offering you a way into your different emotions so that you can take charge of your emotions, not the other way around. I found this conversation with Anjuli to be so therapeutic for my own soul. We dive into 3 emotions in particular that tend to surface unbeknownst forbidden at the holidays. We talk about guilt, including true guilt versus false guilt. We talk about nostalgia, which is such an interesting emotion. I loved what Anjuli and I stumbled upon as we talked about the role of nostalgia in our lives. And we also talk about anger, which often shows up unexpectedly. Spoiler alert, it's closely linked to exhaustion. And so it's so important to recognize the tug of anger on our soul before it takes us over. This is just a beautiful conversation that's real, it's raw, and also deeply prayerful. I love the language through which Anjuli honors these emotions, even as she's constantly bringing them into conversation with God. I am thrilled to bring you my conversation with Anjuli Paschall. Anjuli, I'm so thrilled that you are here today. I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you. You've written this beautiful book all about feelings, and I'm so curious to dive into a little bit of your own relationship with feelings. You talk about how we want to avoid, we want to run away from, we want to control. You also talk about wanting to indulge certain feelings. Tell me a little bit about your younger self, whatever feels, whether it was your early 20s, before you had kids, early young mom. What has your relationship with your emotions been like in the past?
I grew up in a pretty typical evangelical church and home. My parents were very connected to ministry. And so I grew up really with this idea that there are good feelings and bad feelings. And the good feelings, right? Happiness, creativity, joy, and then bad feelings like anger and fear. And even disgust. I would put disgust in there. And so I spent a lot of my life just focusing on how to get to the good feelings. Because I think I even grew up thinking that anger and fear and disgust were in part sinful too. And so my childhood, I was so happy, right? It was just optimism, happiness, focus on good things. If anything bad comes up inside of me, get rid of it. Or something's wrong with me, or it's sin. And so it took a lot of time to start unpacking and realizing that feelings are not bad or good. They're true. They're true. They're not always right, but they're true.
Say a little bit more about that. What do you mean by that? Because I could hear some folks going, what do you mean by true? How is it? Let's say I'm feeling really mad at a friend or really resentful of someone. How can that be true?
Right? That feeling is a true feeling, right? I just recently went through an experience where there was a lot of misunderstanding in a relationship. And the feeling of being misunderstood is very uncomfortable, but it is a true feeling. But it's not necessarily right. Like, there could be different causes or different reasons, or I don't know the whole story. I can interpret the feeling incorrectly, but the feeling itself is true.
I think you're saying something so wise about the feeling is something to be honored. There's something true there. We can misinterpret the feeling. I might feel misunderstood because my friend, in fact, misunderstood me. I might feel misunderstood, and she, in fact, did understand me, and I didn't understand her reply to me.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think it has taken a lot of work to untangle, the family dynamics that I grew up in, but also untangle some of the messages that I heard from the pulpit or from church that I'm sure, maybe well-intended or not. I came to believe, like, if it's good, present it, speak it, perform it. If it's bad, stuff it, ignore it, pretend it isn't there. And that really got me in a world of trouble. It works when you're young, you can get away with pretending and performing, but eventually it catches up with you. And I think probably in my mid-20s, it really caught up with me. Turns out you can't really outrun anger. Turns out you can't really stuff fear. It'll catch up with you eventually. And then probably my mid-20s, when I was actually in seminary, I had to confront these feelings that had been stuffed for so long. And to the point of, it really felt like a serious breakdown. You can only keep that ball underwater for so long until it then becomes like a bomb. And that's what it felt like, this bomb going off inside of me. And until really doing some internal deep dive work and letting some of those feelings that had been ignored or suppressed come up, was I able to actually find integration in a healthy way.
That makes so much sense. You hit that rock bottom of the overwhelm of the feeling, and there's no way out but through.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
I love that you're saying that you began to untangle the knots of your emotions. Then you go into becoming a mom. You're also a spiritual director. Is that right, Anjuli?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And so in both of those roles, similar to me, right, as a therapist, our job in many ways is to keep our feelings on the back burner as we are present to the feelings of others, whether it's our kids, whether it's someone you're mentoring, a spiritual directee, someone you're sitting with. For me as a therapist, right, it's my job to keep my feelings a little bit in the back as I am helping others navigate their way through feelings. I think that's a really interesting role where you're learning to honor your own feelings, but not necessarily have them be front and center in some of those roles. How do you navigate that inside of yourself as you try to stay healthy emotionally, internally?
Well, that's a really great question. I would say it looked a lot like stumbling. It looked a lot like confusion. It looked a lot like the question, what's wrong with me? I think especially becoming a mom, I had already done so much previous training in soul care. And so it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing, right? I have all these tools now. And I think becoming a mom really was a shift for me. And it took some time to integrate real life with heart knowledge. And I think what really became the outlet for me is honesty, because you know about this, right? All the shoulds. And, becoming a mom, I should be happy. I should love every minute of this. I should be grateful. I should not want another life. And I think as I bumped up against all these shoulds when I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, especially when I had 1 or 2 kids, I noticed how lonely I was. But I shouldn't be lonely, right? Because this is my dream. This is what I've always wanted. But I'd go to parks and I just remember just being weepy because of, it seems like everybody else is having the best time pushing their kid on the swing while I'm over here being like, this is kind of slow, boring work. And I don't really know how to play. I don't know how to do this motherhood thing. And I think when I say honesty, Allison, I mean talking about those feelings of loneliness and sadness and grief and even some helplessness. And those, and connecting to my feelings, right? Being honest with them and actually feeling them, giving myself permission to feel them, and then to speak them, be it online or with my friend or at my MOPS group table. It actually became the means for intimacy and connection with other people. And so I guess I wouldn't look at it like I'm attending to others as one thing and I attend to myself as another thing. But it's like as I attend to myself and my heart and honor that, I'm actually able to attend to others and my kids and make space for them in a much better way.
That's a great reframe. The more you are attuning to your own emotions, you are actually more able to attend to theirs. When you started being more honest, what were some of the reactions you got, both negative and positive?
I'll give you a personal one. When I shared about my early mid-20s, when I started to, oh my gosh, what is this feeling I feel? What is this fear, anxiety? Oh my goodness, anxiety, right? I remember sitting in a parking lot with my best friend and sharing that with her, how actually really scared I was. And I was sweating. I was dripping, sweating fear. And she looks at me and she's just like, yeah. Almost so what? Not to minimize it, but yeah. Of course you feel scared. I was so empowered then I'm not going to be rejected in my fear, but also I'm going to find friendship. And I can also find more words for it, which led to so much more community. And I think with motherhood, I think that's where I started really writing online, was talking about this honest place of motherhood for me. And it actually, people came out of the woodworks, just like me too. Oh my gosh, I'd get these messages from moms just weeping and feeling the depths of their own shame and guilt. And it actually became such a bridge of relationship.
You have an amazing presence, both in person and online. And you really do have a ministry, I think, of the more I see that in you. You're so authentic. You show up so honestly, so vulnerably in a way that invites others to feel seen. And it's a very beautiful gift gift that I hear from what you're saying came out of just your own, I have to be honest about this. I have to be honest.
I'm scared to death. It's the scariest thing ever to step into vulnerability, but it's also true.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And the truth sets us free.
Turns out, right?
Yeah. Tell me a little bit. The book highlights how many, Anjuli?
75.
The book highlights 75 different emotions. First of all, I want to know, how did you come up with your list? And then second of all, I'm curious, which ones were the hardest for you to write about and pray through as you lead us through them?
Right. So I broke the book down into the 6 core emotions, which are surprise, fear, anger, happiness, disgust, and sadness. You can find variations of the core emotions, but those are the ones I really stuck to. And then under each core emotion are subcategories of feelings. And each one was challenging for me, but probably the hardest was, it sounds so funny now that I say it, but one was playful. That was a really hard one to write. And another hard one was anxiety. Each chapter, right? However you feel, you can open up to that chapter. And the first section is language for your feeling, because oftentimes we don't even know how or why we feel what we feel. And so I did my best to kind of take from my own journals, my own diaries, if you will, of how I experienced that feeling to help the reader connect to their own feeling of agitation or worry or guilt. And then the next section is just a liturgy of that feeling, opening the heart to God. I think anxiety was tricky because, anxiety itself is really just the fear of not feeling other feelings. And so it was just hard to name and write because not everybody, but a lot of people feel anxiety and they feel it very differently. And so I so deeply didn't want to miss somebody and neglect or dismiss their feeling, but I also didn't want to overshoot it either. So it's just, I rewrote anxiety like 18 times.
Yeah, I could see that because anxiety it's very familiar, but it also surfaces in so many different ways. I thought it was beautiful. I'd love to just even hear maybe a snippet of one to kind of think through, man, I'm feeling this, and now here I can go use this tool to walk myself through it.
So yeah, if you are feeling anxiety, you would open up to the chapter on anxious, and it gives a general definition. It's the feeling of avoiding other important emotions. And in the language for feeling anxious, this is how I begin. I can't even recall when this feeling began. It just was. My body can't settle down. Everything itches. A slow growing panic pulsing through me makes it difficult to breathe. I am anxious. I can manage many things, but not this. Fear races through me, and I can't rationalize, organize, or talk myself out of my escalated state of anxiety. It has a mind of its own. It is the boss. Trying to regain right thinking, a right posture, a right plan is exhausting. And there is a war within me. And I just go on for another paragraph of just the temptation, anxiety, and how I want to manage it and control it, or how I want to suppress it, or I just fall prey and just let it take over sometimes, and I don't have a way out. And then the next section is just a liturgy for when I feel anxious. I kind of want people to pay attention to feelings in their body. I think that's really important. But ultimately for people to open their heart to God with how they feel. God, when have I felt this in my story before? God, please do your deep healing work in my life. Help me, God, to be curious about my pain and the wounds that remain in me. Help me be kind to myself as I enter and feel all that remains unfelt in my soul. Gift me words for my heart. God, this anxiety takes me on a journey that is rather painful, mysterious, and unknown. But God, you are here with compassion and care and understanding. With you is an ocean of compassion. With you is a dwelling place for comfort. With you, I am made clean. It goes on just to share more about opening your heart in prayer. And then every chapter ends with just a simple verse about prayer and meeting with God and your feeling.
That's beautiful. Is there an audiobook version, and do you read it?
It's coming. Allison is coming. Unfortunately, I don't get to read it this time. I've had a lot of vocal cord issues, but I got a good reader and she's awesome, and just entrusting the Lord to that.
Yeah, because it's beautiful just to hear it. I actually wonder, we're going into the holidays the holiday season, which is a time when a lot of emotions get stirred up. What's an emotion? What's a section of the book that might speak to the listener who is feeling, kind of to your point, maybe some sadness, maybe some frustration, even some anger, and feels like they shouldn't feel that way going into the holiday season?
Right. I'll let you pick. The two that come up for me are nostalgic. I feel really nostalgic during the holidays, or definitely as moms, guilty. Like we just can never do enough. Which one do you want to?
I want to do both. we need to have a live poll here. I think guilt, I'm very curious about the nostalgia, but I think guilt is so baseline around the holidays. Let's hear.
Always. That's why I'm telling you, we go into debt every December because like, oh, just one more thing, just one more gift, one more party, one more stocking stuffer. Yeah, guilt is very related to fear, right? And so fearing that punishment awaits you for a crime or wrongdoing you have committed, right? I think it's so important to pay attention to true guilt and false guilt, right? False guilt comes with a lot of shoulds. And true guilt really, have you actually done something wrong? So yeah, I'll read just an excerpt from that. But I think the thing I want to invite people to do is to pay attention instead of reacting, especially with guilt, right? Like I said, we can go into a lot of unnecessary debt because of guilt. And really when we stop and pay attention to like, oh, what is that thing I feel? And I'm afraid of losing relationship with a spouse or a kid or a parent or a sibling. And so we react by doing something. And I think it's important to pay attention, like, am I actually doing something wrong? You know? And so when that guilt comes up, to pay attention to even your temptations in it, right? Do I just power through it by buying more gifts and doing more things and always saying yes so that hopefully the guilt monster will go away? That's one temptation we power through. Do I suppress it? Do I push it down and just ignore it, stay busy, avoid it, don't look at it, don't pay any attention to it, just stay busy, right? That's another temptation. And then the other temptation is we fall prey to it. We just let it consume us and we lose all of our agency. And so I want, instead of powering through, suppressing, or falling prey to the feeling, I want to invite people to name it. Oh, there's that guilt again. There it is. I see you. I see you there. The second thing I want to invite people to do is actually feel it. Feel it. Where do I feel it in my body, in my chest, my neck, my back, my throat? And give yourself permission just for a moment to feel what you feel. And then lastly, I want to invite people to give your feeling a sound. If it's a sigh, if it's the exhale, if it's tears, and if you're even able to give it some words. And so hopefully this book will be a resource that gives you some words for your guilt. Here, I'll read a little part. God, I feel guilty. Search my heart, oh God. Help me listen. Right now, all I can hear is my guilt, and it plagues me. I'm afraid of being found out. I'm afraid of punishment or condemnation. Help me know if this guilt is from you or from another source. I want to know if I'm feeling false guilt. Am I trying to keep laws and rules that you didn't ask me to obey? If I have not actually broken a command of yours, this guilt is not from you, but from a false God in my life. God, if I did something that is truly wrong, I seek forgiveness. Help me accept forgiveness. God, forgive me for my wrong. Yet even as I speak these words, conflict is provoked within me. I want to atone for my own guilt. Be it pride or vanity or greed or self-righteousness, deep within my will, it is incredibly hard to accept that I can't save myself. I want to prove myself, restore myself, and I hate that I can't. God, you invite me to feel my fear. Guilt at its core is about fear, and this is painful. When fear emerges, help me greet this feeling with gentleness instead of hiding. Let fear be what leads me to you instead of lying, covering, and pretending. And Lord, no fear can separate me from your love. Your love lives at the core of my existence. May I be with you even here as you are with me.
That's beautiful. These are naming tools. These are tools to help give us language for what we're feeling. You're helping us kind of get in there. What is it? What's connected to it through a conversation with God, right? Where it's totally safe to kind of tease out the threads of the knot of emotion. I actually am curious to hear a little bit, whether you want to read or just share. Tell me a little bit about nostalgia. I think that's such a interesting feeling that sometimes it's hard to pinpoint, right? Sometimes it can be tinged. I think sometimes nostalgia, especially around the holidays, can be tinged with grief. But sometimes it can also be life-giving. It can be I can almost find myself sometimes wanting to bathe in nostalgia, kind of wanting to just let it linger over me, want to kind of live in nostalgia. And sometimes I don't know. I'm like, is that healthy? Is that not healthy? So let's talk a little bit about nostalgia. I think that's a really powerful naming.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's such a nuanced feeling. Like sadness is sadness. It's more, there's a purity to it. Anger is anger. It's just all the way through. It's just, there is a frustration, rage in there. But nostalgia is one of those that kind of imagine like a skier, a downhill skier, the slalom skier. It goes back and forth. It goes between sadness and it goes into fear and then it goes back into happiness. And ironically, as I was doing research.
Like gratitude even?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It could go there's a lot of ways nostalgia can go.
Yes.
In our minds, yeah.
As I was doing the research for this book, the category, it really, at the core, was happiness, even though, it can feel many different things. So I kept it in that category. But really, nostalgia is the longing for home. The longing for home. And that's what the holidays do to us, doesn't it? If it's your childhood home, those young memories of youthfulness and where there was a safety, where everything was just as it should be, right? And so I think the word bathing in nostalgia is actually pretty accurate because there's a soothingness, even though there's a sorrow. And so there's a comfort in it.
There is. I'm thinking about it because I love this naming because I actually will seek it out sometimes to soothe. I'll go seek out, like if I've been working too hard or if I'm a little burnt out or if I can't get out of my head, because that's part of my bent is it's hard for me to sink into my emotions. I'll seek out, like I'll go drive past an old memory. I talk about this again, and I shouldn't feel this way. I went back and found an old apartment and those memories flood over me. It takes me to a different time. And there's something very soothing about that. And I sometimes have to like chase it. I have to pursue it. It's so interesting to hear you name that because I've not put that name on it. It's just sort of a tug at my heart. And it's exactly what you said, for something elusive, some memory that brings me to a different place that is soothing. That's a great word for it. It's soothing. I think happiness is the right category for it because even though there's a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit of, what could have, what was is no longer, it doesn't take me down. It does something inside my body that feels soothing. I think that's really an interesting naming. I love that.
It's comfort. So it's like, right, especially the holidays when we have that cocoa that we had when we were little kids, or we sit in front of the Christmas tree and remember what it was like to be a little kid and looking up at a tree instead of at the tree. And these like songs, right, that just, take us to the core of our being. And so I think with nostalgia, right, there's still those temptations, those three things. We can power through it. We are going to feel this, right? Kids, we're going to have this amazing memory-making experience. Right. And you're gonna go down memory lane with me and dive in deep, right? Or we just ignore it because there is a sorrow to it. Just, keep the ball under the water. Don't look at it. Or
it feels like too much, maybe.
Too much.
Yeah.
Especially
so we want to avoid it.
Yeah, especially if there's been a lot of trauma since that experience. It's if you've lost a loved one, that can be painful. And then there's the indulging in it, right? I tend to do that with nostalgia. I hear what you're saying. It's like, I drive past all my old houses all the time and my kids, I drive them crazy. Like, remember when? And they're like, Mom, can we just go home? And so
I'm a little bit of a nostalgia junkie.
Yes,
I think I am.
That. We need a shirt.
It's very comforting. But I understand what you're saying. It can also evoke sadness. And the thing for me is sometimes other folks, like in my family, aren't as much. And I get it. And it's because some of those memories also have a lot of pain. It's not that mine don't, but for whatever reason, the way I'm wired, tapping on it doesn't evoke the pain. It evokes the comfort.
When your gut feels off, your whole day can feel off. Activia probiotic yogurts and dailies are a quick, easy, and tasty way to up your gut health game every day. They're deliciously smooth and creamy and packed with billions of live and active probiotics. Your gut is where it all begins, so start with Activia. Enjoying Activia twice a day for 2 weeks as part of a balanced diet and healthy lifestyle can help reduce the frequency of minor digestive discomfort.
What are some other ones that surprised you or that you noticed yourself particularly drawn to, or maybe even ones you were like, I don't want to go there. I don't like that one.
Well, you may have noticed we have not even talked about anger because, man, anger, I could live in sadness. I could swim in sadness. I find consolation in sadness. It's like my long lost friend, but anger is like terrifying. Anger is a very vulnerable feeling. And I think growing up, right, in the church as well, I mean, my family, anger was dangerous. So if someone was angry, something was being thrown, something was being slammed, someone was driving away. In the church, it was like, don't let the sun go down in your anger. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just suppress it and pretend it's not there because the sun is setting, you know? And so anger was so hard for me to write because that's probably the one I've resisted experiencing in my life the most because it was bad or sinful or scary.
And so in writing it, you have to tap into it.
Yeah. You know, anger can be as small as, and here, right, laziness is anger. That would surprise me, right? I know, that turned my head.
Say more, and I'm curious.
So laziness is anger turned under, is anger suppressed.
Sure.
And so
Sure, I see.
You push your anger way down and it actually kind of numbs you out and you become lazy. So anger goes from such a range from laziness to furious. Like that is a range of feeling. And so probably furious, you know, Allison, part of why actually, I mean, in full vulnerability was why my vocal cords are so damaged was because I went through a pretty traumatic experience a couple months ago. And for me, screaming was absolutely necessary for me to find healing. And so it was just this experience for over a week of, it was like a discipline. I had to force myself to get my anger out. So I'd go for drives and just scream. And it was scary and hard, but you know what? It was freedom, like getting it out of me. And so, right, it was like one of the greatest gifts God has given me is my anger.
It's mobilizing. It's mobilizing. It's empowering. It's hard, like you said. It's so scary. I can only imagine kind of putting myself with you in that car. There's something about a car. I've noticed myself, for me, I'm the opposite. I don't love anger, but I have a hard time with sadness. And I've noticed when I really need to cry it out, and this is a thing I've since learned, I will get in my car because there's something about a car that's contained, or the shower is another one people talk about. There's like a time limit. You can't be there forever, but you can get it all out. Like for me, I can sob it out and then I'm going to get out of my car and close the door. And so I could see for anger, just getting in your car and screaming it out. I could just feel it in my body. There's a containment for it. There's going to be an end when you're going to get out of the car. That's really powerful. But you are allowing that emotion to flow through you versus stifling it or indulging it, letting it just live with you all the time.
Oh, so painful to do that. And then it just leaks on all the people you love the most.
So when you would do that, Anjuli, and you would just let that anger out, how did you feel afterward?
You know, gosh, aren't feelings in so many ways quite mysterious? Most of the time after I would scream, I would start crying. And it's weird. I think for other people, it's the other way around. Sometimes they cry and it leads to screaming, you know? But it's certainly a journey of the body and the heart of processing and moving through true pain. But it ultimately brought an immense amount of freedom. It was like breaking out of jail. It felt like my hands were tied and then I was free, loose.
That's powerful. My sister used to always say to me when I would go through seasons a little bit, she has a higher tolerance for the big emotions, which I'm super grateful for. So she becomes one of those people that can help me when I'm like, I need to feel something, but I don't want to. She used to say to me, anger's going to kick you in the butt on the way out. And that's kind of what you're saying. You got to get it out. And then often on the other side is that oh, now I'm just hurt. But then you also need to feel that. So could you give us, I would love to hear some of your, as we close down today, I would love to hear some of your words that you speak to God through anger.
Yeah, we'll find some.
I love this.
We could do this all day.
I could do this all day. I really could.
I could do resentful, furious, exhausted. Exhausted is anger. Isn't that interesting?
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So exhausted, right? It's beyond tired. And so it's like you are exhausted to the point of anger. It's such a deep tiredness that it aggravates your bones.
So this is honestly, thinking of the holidays, this is another thing we hear. I'm exhausted. It's so interesting, even tying together what we've been talking about. You know, I call it guilt-driven love. I've been guilty. So I'm doing. Then I'm exhausted and angry.
Yes.
You're right.
This is how it comes out. And I will do this with my husband. But it's like I buy all the presents, right? I'm the buyer. I purchase them. I pick them. I get them. I store them. I hide them. And then I have to wrap them, which is like the thing I hate more than anything in the world is wrapping a bazillion presents. And then they're all under the tree. And then it's like I'm so exhausted. And now I'm not just exhausted. I'm angry at my husband as though it's somehow his fault, that I took it all on myself. But that's where it's like, it turns to him,
Exactly.
And so it's anger.
True that exhaustion to the level of, or even at your kids, even at your kids, like for their existence, right? And it's nobody else's fault. That's a really powerful naming. Again, that level of exhaustion can be a form of anger. And this is so interesting. The three emotions essentially we picked, guilt, nostalgia, and anger, right? There's that anger, guilt thing at the holidays, I think is really, really, I'm feeling it. I mean, yes. I'm like, I'm seeing the pattern in my own life.
Happy holidays. Gear up.
I had a conversation with Allie Worthington on the podcast about her new book about parenting. And she talked about the bitterness of family holidays with her, and she didn't want to bring that into her own holidays. And it's what we're talking about, right? It's that kind of, I'm sacrificing everything for you, and then I'm mad at you.
Totally. Yes. I'm making you this amazing dinner, which no one asked me to make. Spending all this money on the food, doing the table as beautiful ever, having the right music on, and then the kids don't eat it. And then I'm mad at them. It's like, And that's exhaustion, right? Deep tiredness that fuels anger. Maybe I'll just close with that then.
Yeah, I think that's good.
God, help me believe in the good of the journey I am on. The good is for others in my care. The good is for the spreading of the gospel. The good is for the healing of my own pain. God, help me endure because I can't do it on my own anymore. I can't carry this cross alone. It's harder than I imagined. It is hard to not harbor anger. It is hard to forgive. It is hard to let go. It is hard to relax. It is hard to surrender. It is hard to believe that you care about my life more than I do. You understand exhaustion. You took space to be with your Father when your soul and body were weary. May I learn from you how to rest in God's love. If it would be your will, please deliver me from this pain because it is hard to bear. If my circumstances do not change, may your grace be enough to sustain me. I pray it would be so, one moment at a time. What you have entrusted to me, I entrust back to you. I give you my life. Even as weary as I am, may my life be an offering to you. Lord, hear my prayer.
Woo! That's beautiful. I could listen to you read those prayers all day long. I just so appreciate this beautiful, what a beautiful gift, too, to give to people, this beautiful resource, Anjuli, this naming tool to really not just name simplistically, because I think that's sometimes what's hard about naming an emotion. I just feel, right? I just have all the feelings, but to tease out the nuances of each feeling in conversation with God. I'm just so grateful for you for sharing it with us today. You cover so many different emotions. And I love what you're saying. You could just kind of pick it up to the one that stands out to you. Maybe it's a surprise, maybe you're not sure. So you kind of flip through the pages and see which one sort of leaps out at you and go into it. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I'm just really grateful.
Thank you.
That you took the time to be with us today.
Thank you for endorsing it and your friendship and just always championing other people. Such a gift.
Well, tell us before we close 2 questions I like to ask. Sometimes I forget, but I like to ask 90% of my guests.
That's good. 90% is good.
What would you say to that younger you back when the bottom was falling out from suppressed emotions? What would you want to say to her now?
I would probably say, and even in light of this conversation, is anger is a gift because it leads you to hope, the love of God.
That's beautiful. What is bringing out the best of you right now?
Backyard fire pit conversations.
I love that.
Sometimes a kid joins us and sometimes they don't. But I feel like when it's dark and there's the glow, the warmth of the fire, it kind of does. It brings out the best me. Yeah, great question.
That's beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram a lot. So it's lovealways.anjuli, ANJULI, or my website where I have a few courses that I offer, anjulipaschall.com.
Well, check it out. And thank you so much again, Anjuli,
Yay,
for all
thanks,
your
Allison.
good work. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Best of You. It would mean so much if you take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts and click the plus or follow button. That will ensure you don't miss an episode and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave your 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday. And remember, as you become the best of who you are, you honor God, you heal others, and you stay true to your God-given self.
Hey, I'm Greer, host of the Unfinished Idea podcast, where listeners and I get to journey together to better understand the neurodiverse world. Together with my husband, we have 2 boys and 2 dogs and raising a child with additional needs. Our day-to-day experience isn't being talked about in everyday life, and I see a gap in those leading people who are neurodivergent. Whether you're a parent, a friend, a teacher, or a neighbor, the neurodivergent world is all around us. So this podcast is for you. I have conversations over a cup of tea or coffee, helping to bring awareness about how neurodivergent people experience the world, as well as families who are raising children with different needs. This podcast will share practical help, tips, and the joys, struggles, and differences in being neurodivergent or raising a child who is. Each week, I will spend 30 minutes talking and interviewing others in the neurodiverse space and giving you the opportunity to learn and grow and feel seen and heard by how we interact with each other and the world. Search for The Unfinished Idea in your favorite podcast app and come learn about the neurodivergent world. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.